Big news coming out of the Fifth Circuit Court of New Orleans that affects homesteaders. Stay tuned for this one. So I have often said on my channel that the most valuable skill you will learn as a homesteader is to learn how to butcher. The reason why it's valuable is because very few people know how to do it or feel comfortable doing it. And so if you can master that skill, you will always be able to feed your family. Another very, very important skill to have that will always be able to feed your family, historically speaking, this shows and proves out, is being able to know how to distill spirits, to distill alcohol. I've often said on my channel, when it comes to preparedness, this is probably your #1 prep item. And the reason for that is because it will always feed your family, and I give numerous examples, historical examples, that bears that out. And I've talked on my channel before about having a federal fuel permit. They're free, you can get them from the federal government. We've reviewed certain stills in the past here on the homestead, although I'm not allowed to really do a lot of stuff with that federal fuel permit, so I don't showcase it a lot. But I'm seeing at homesteading expos stills more and more being sold to the public. Copper stills, stainless steel stills, all that. So here's the news article, let's read it together. Over at Reuters, U.S. Appeals Court declares a 158-year-old home distilling ban unconstitutional. Holy smokes. April 10th, this was about a week ago, the U.S. Appeals Court on Friday declared unconstitutional a nearly 158-year-old federal ban on home distilling, calling it an unnecessary and improper means for Congress to exercise its power to tax. The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, however you want to say that, New Orleans, ruled in favor of the nonprofit Hobby Distillers Association and 4 of its 1,300 members. They argued that people should be free to distill spirits at home, whether as a hobby or for personal consumption, including, in one instance, to create an apple pie vodka recipe. This was actually mentioned in the ruling. The ban was part of a law passed during Reconstruction in July 1868. This is just after the Civil War, in part to thwart liquor tax evasion and subjected violators up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Writing for a 3-judge panel, Circuit Judge Edith Holland Jones said the ban actually reduced tax revenue by preventing distilling in the first place, unlike laws that regulated the manufacture and labeling of distilled spirits on which the government could collect taxes. We'll talk about this more in a second and give you an analogy of why that plays an important role in this whole ruling. She also said that under the government's logic, Congress could criminalize virtually any in-home activity that might escape notice from tax collectors, including remote work and home-based businesses. Without any limiting principle, the government's theory would violate this court's obligation to read the Constitution carefully to avoid creating a general federal authority akin to the police power, Jones wrote. The U.S. Department of Justice has no immediate comment. They don't want to comment on this. We'll talk about that in a second too, also. Another defendant, the Treasury Department's Alcohol, Tobacco, and Tax and Trade Bureau, the TTB, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Devin Watkins, a lawyer representing the Hobby Distillers Association, in an interview called the ruling an important decision about the limits of federal power. Andrew Grossman, who's argued the nonprofit's appeal, called the decision an important victory for individual liberty. That lets the plaintiffs pursue their passion to distill fine beverages in their homes. Okay, so he says this is an important victory for individual liberty. I'm going to disagree with that. Again, we'll wait here until I finish the article. I look forward to sampling their output, he says. The decision, now this is important also, the decision upheld a July 2024 ruling by U.S. District Judge Mark Pittman from Fort Worth, Texas. He put his ruling on hold so the government could appeal. Now, before we get into all of those talking points, I want to just give you the analogy that I mentioned earlier when I was reading the article. We'll start there. So imagine that you want to make an apple pie at home, just an apple pie, a normal apple pie. But the government says, no, you can't make that apple pie at home because Little Debbie makes apple pies and they get taxed on all the apple pies they make. And so if you make an apple pie at home, you're now avoiding the tax And so we have to make sure you're not allowed to make apple pies at home so that you go out and buy them from Little Debbie so that the taxes get paid. That's essentially what the government did after the Civil War. When it came to alcohol. You can't make alcohol at home because we want to make sure we get our taxes. And so you got to go buy it from a company that's licensed and pays taxes so that taxes will be paid. So the government today, these appeal court, or basically was started in Fort Worth, Texas, they said, you know what? That's illogical. People should be allowed to make apple pies at home. They should be allowed to make things at home. And just because there's one section that's government regulated in order to get taxes paid doesn't mean that you're not allowed to make things at home in order to get taxes paid. So that's basically how this has been presented to the court, and the court has rightfully ruled in that favor. However, and in life there's always a however. Well, this is why this is not a victory, okay? Number one, this, because of the ruling, is only in the Fifth Circuit Court. If you don't live within the Fifth Circuit Court's jurisdiction, this doesn't apply to you, okay? So I think that's like 4 states, Louisiana, I don't know, you have to look it up, whatever the Fifth Circuit Court is. You don't have access. Also, this doesn't apply to you if you're not a member of the HDA, the Hobby Distillers Association. And so I went, after I heard about this news, I went right, because I've been on their website before. I think they had an older forum, and now they've changed their forum. I tried to log in with my old password, and it didn't work. So I tried to register again, because I guess they updated their PHP, BB software, whatever it runs their forum. And I tried to register again, and it wouldn't let me. So it said I registered again. It's going to send me a note to approve, an email to approve, and I never got the email. So what I'm assuming happened right now, they got an influx of a zillion people trying to join the Hobby Distillers Association in order to be included with this ruling. So they've shut all that down. So the Hobby Distillers Association doesn't look like they're applying or allowing new members to apply. But this ruling only applies to, number one, Fifth Circuit, and if you're a member of the Hobby Distillers Association. Also, on top of that, it only applies to you if state law allows. So for instance, in Missouri, state law allows, it's permissible to make spirits for home consumption. However, Missouri does not fall into the Fifth Circuit Court's realm of ruling. That's also important. But here in Arkansas, where I live, also in the Ozarks, you're not allowed to do home distilling by state law. So that's why when I had to do that review for those companies, I had to get a federal fuel permit in order to just possess the still. Even though I wasn't gonna make anything with it, just to possess the still, to cover myself legally, I had to get that federal fuel permit in order to be able to possess that still here in the state of Arkansas. And it's still kind of a gray area on that. But I've covered all my bases as legally as best as possible. Third option thing I want to mention to you is that even if you do go ahead and live in the Fifth Circuit Court, or you live in Louisiana, and you're a member of the HDA, the Hobby Distillers Association, you still have to pay taxes on whatever it is you make. So you've met all those criteria. Now you go ahead and run a batch, and you still have to pay taxes on that. I think it's like $13 a gallon or something like that, whatever it is, taxes on that. If you don't, you're now in federal violation. So don't think that for a second that this is really a victory for individual liberty. You're still being forced to pay taxes on something you make at home, something that people have literally been making for thousands of years. This is not an old technology. And something that people have been making since the very founding of our country. Okay, all of that to say, this will most certainly be appealed. So the Fort Worth judge in 2024 ruled this way. It went to the appeals court, but the judge in Fort Worth, Texas, put his ruling on hold because he knew this was going to be appealed by the federal government. This has not been put on hold yet. It may, we don't know. There may be some new news coming out. However, it's got about a 99% chance of being appealed by the federal government. The federal government does not like giving up power. It does not like giving up power. It does not like giving up control. It does not like the fact that a judge, appeals court, have now both said, you can do whatever you want in your home. The government does not like giving up power, so I expect 100%, almost 100% chance of this being appealed. And if that happens, it will go to the Supreme Court and they will have to decide. So, while I think this is big news, it's very interesting. Understand that probably doesn't affect you. Even if it does, you're still gonna have to pay taxes on it. And I don't see this as a win for individual liberty here in this country. However, what I do think it does is brings this back up to the forefront of the public's awareness. And so that maybe, you know, we get a stepping stone here, a baby step there, whatever, and maybe this moves towards better or more individual liberty. But also, I think it's a talking point because I've mentioned many times on my channel, this is very, very important when it comes to during times, hard economic times, times of economic collapse, to go ahead and produce your own alcohol. Because, and I've given many examples before in my talk. In fact, I'm giving a talk this coming weekend in Jasper, Arkansas at the Shindig. It's called the Shindig event. And I will be talking about preparedness, and home distillation is one of the main things when it comes to preparedness. And I give that example in Bosnia during the Bosnian War, where a man was able to distill some alcohol and he used that to feed his family during that time of economic collapse and war. So this is something as a prep, you should take note of. You should have the equipment because right now, here in this country, that equipment is at your fingertips. All you need is enough money to go out and buy that stuff and you can easily distill at home. Now, it's up to you whether or not you register and follow the laws of the land and get a federal fuel permit or, you know, jump through whatever hoops you have to jump through in order to be legal. But if things go completely sideways in this country, it will behoove you to know how to distill this. And it's not just for alcohol. People are always going to want their alcohol. It's not about people wanting to get drunk. The majority reason why people always have done this throughout history was medicine. Medicine, ladies and gentlemen. This is how you made tinctures. It's always how you made tinctures. You remember that song, "A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down"? Because it was always made with usually vodka or some other alcohol that someone distilled in their backyard or in their home. That's how medicines were made. And right now, I've always been pushing this book. It's the herbal extracts book. If you bought this on Amazon, you would pay over $1,000 for both books. But I give them to all my patrons for just $1. You join at the dollar level over at patreon.com, and I give you this book that if you bought it on Amazon would cost you over $1,000 for the two books. And that's why this has always been important. This book was written over 100 years ago by Dr. A.B. Howard. It was before all the pharmaceuticals and all this stuff tried to wipe this information out of existence. It's a very, very valuable book because of the information contained within. It doesn't tell you how to make tinctures. That's easy. You just got to soak your stuff in the alcohol, and that's easy. 8 weeks later, it's done. It tells you what to do with them and why you do what you do with them. And it includes color photos of all the plants, many of them that grow right here, behind me, on your homesteads. Many of them, most of them in North America. So if you're a North American homestead, this book, you can help you identify medicines that have always been used, especially even in the last 100 years. And that's the main reason why people have always made and had possessed stills, was for medicinal purposes, truly medicinal purposes. If you're interested, you can find the link to that book down below. It only costs you $1 to join my Patreon. Pay the $1. I'm sure I can find $1 in probably underneath the seats of your car. Pay the $1. And then download the PDFs and then get them printed so you're not keeping them on the cloud. So if things go sideways, you know how to make these very important tinctures. All right, what do you think? What do you think about the ruling? Is it gonna go the way I think it's gonna go? Or you guys just be like, I'm gonna do what I wanna do anyway. I'd love to hear your thoughts below. But it's been big news lately in the news, and I thought I'd read it to you because we'll talk about some more stuff like this coming up. And if you're going to be in the Jasper area, Jasper, Arkansas, I will be there this weekend. Michelle also will be speaking. She's going to be speaking on homestead mental health for homesteaders, things like that. She is in Australia. She was a licensed or approved certified counselor. And so she knows a lot about this topic, and she's going to talk about that. She's lived in a tiny home for many years. She knows a lot about this topic, so if you're interested, Jasper, Arkansas, we're going to be there this weekend at the Shindig. Just Google Shindig, Jasper, Arkansas, and all the information will come up. See you next time in the Homestead. Bye.
There's something deeply comforting about returning to simple ways of living and learning from plants, and remembering that so much of what we need is already here. Over the years on the homestead, we've been quietly gathering knowledge, learning how to work with herbs, how to make teas, balms, and tinctures, and how to care for ourselves and our family in a more natural way. We've drawn so much knowledge from these 2 books. They are 100-year-old books by Dr. A.B. Howard. They are simple, heartfelt guides to the plants that we use every day. Inside you'll find hundreds of herbs and what they're used for. Most of the plants can be found in your backyard. This isn't a complicated book. It is a return to simplicity, to learning, and to recognizing and reconnecting with the rhythm of the land. You'll find these books on Amazon for over $1,000. And the reason these 2 books are so valuable is because the information in them works. These books are also out of copyright and out of print. If you feel called to go deeper into herbal living with us, you can find these beautiful books as a PDF for $1 when you join our Patreon page as a member. And for those who join us at various membership levels on Patreon, you're not just able to purchase these 2 books, but you're stepping into a quieter space, a more private space, with more private videos and monthly live streams, and a closer connection to our homestead life. If that speaks to you, we would love to have you with us, so please consider joining today.